Thank you all for coming. I would like to ask you to please check your phones now and silence them, or please turn them off. Thank you.
Ovieda High School. Thank you all so much for coming here tonight. This event is not only important to our school, but for our community as a whole. Tonight we will be hearing stories of our past, listening to what is happening to our present, so that we can all work together to make a better future. I'd like to welcome to the stage JSU Representative Daniel Nabatian.
Well, there are a lot of people here. There are still more seats up front. What was that? If you're next to an open seat, good idea, raise your hand. Right, good idea, right there. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Touché. My name is Daniel Nabatian, and I have the privilege and honor of coordinating 8 Jewish Student Union clubs here in Orlando. The Jewish Student Union offers free Jewish programming to teens regardless of religious affiliation at public and private schools during club hours. The Jewish Student Union offers community service and a fun and engaging environment where teens can connect to one another and can connect to Jewish culture. If you don't have a Jewish Student Union at your school, please come over to me afterwards and we can discuss making JSU a reality on your campus. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank a few people. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Genia and Gerald for making the long trip up here. Thank you so much for coming. It's an honor to have you in our presence tonight. We really look forward to hearing your stories. Thank you. I'd also like to thank Ovieda High School, and specifically Principal Tribus and the Seminole County School Boards for helping and for opening their doors tonight and helping us make this program a real success. Tonight wouldn't be possible without all of our sponsors. Join Orlando, Stand With Us, and the Kuperbergs. Join Orlando has been super supportive in helping JSU make its mark in its very first year here in Orlando. Stand With Us has been very instrumental in tonight's program and helped us find Genia and Jerry and even drove them up all the way from Delray Beach. Rayna, thank you so much. And finally, the Kuperbergs. The Kuperbergs are the driving force of tonight's program. The Kuperbergs took an idea and turned it into a reality. Thank you so much for everything you've done to make sure that tonight is a huge success. Also finally, I'd like to thank Mrs. Haran, Seth, Sammy, Sarah, Dylan, and Aviv for all their tireless efforts to make sure that tonight's program was wildly successful, and for all of their hard work in making sure that the Jewish Student Union at Oviedo High School is a wild success. Thank you. I can honestly say that you guys make me love my job. The following story was told to me by David Lukens, and Shirley told it to him. Now, who is Shirley? Shirley Chisholm was elected to Congress in 1968. She made headlines as the first African-American woman ever elected to Congress. She was to serve in New York City. Unfortunately, due to racism and political pressure, her congressional career was stunted as she was selected to serve on the Agricultural Committee in New York City. As you might know, there's not much agriculture in New York City. She was beside herself. After a few days, she received a phone call from a rabbi who lived only a couple of blocks away. That rabbi's name was Rabbi Schneerson. He calls her into his office and says, "Shirley, you've been blessed." And Shirley looks at the rabbi, puzzled, and says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Shirley, you have such a blessing." She still doesn't know what to make of it. The rabbi says, "Shirley, I understand you were selected to be on the Agricultural Committee." She says, "Yeah, there's not much agriculture in New York City." He says, "But there are hungry people in New York City. And this country has a surplus of food." Shirley, now understanding what the rabbi meant, went back to work with an added vigor and was recharged. On her first day in Washington, she met Senator Bob Dole from Kansas. Senator Dole was trying to find a way to offset the losses of his farmer back in his home state due to the surplus. Senator Dole and Shirley had a long conversation that day and many days after. Until a few short months later, in 1969, a WIC pilot program was launched. This program gave food for financially needy families with high-risk pregnancies. In 1973, the Agriculture and Consumer Protection Act was launched and made sure that food stamps were available in every jurisdiction. Today, 10 million Americans receive the benefits of Shirley's hard work a month. Shirley took an act that was fueled by hatred and discrimination and turned it into something that not only affected and impacted her career, but impacted millions of Americans. The students at Oviedo High School have faced hatred and discrimination, but that's not what tonight is about. Tonight is about a vision that Sami Kuperberg and the Jewish Student Union have. Tonight is about hearing Genia and Jerry's stories. Tonight is the first step in building a community that's connected, more united, and stronger than ever. Tonight starts that process, that dream, that vision of the Jewish Student Union, because one day starts today. I'd like to call up the Jewish Student Union 2017 Ovieda High Board.
Good evening, everyone. My name
is Sarah Cooper, and I'm a senior here at Ovieda High School. So, ignorance, hatred, and discrimination aren't topics we like to dwell on as a society. It makes us uncomfortable. But in the political culture of today, and with mounting polarization of ideas and beliefs, it has become too easy to outwardly express hatred towards marginalized groups all around the world. On November 11th of this year, thousands of people gathered to celebrate Poland's 99th Independence Day in Warsaw. But blocks away from the central towers of Warsaw, a larger crowd developed, one consisting of as many as 60,000 white nationalists carrying signs with ethnocentric, nationalistic phrases like clean blood and white urine. Marching under flares and red smoke, they chanted, Islam and Holocaust, destruction of Jews, and Sipad. In the same country, need I remind you, in which many of the worst atrocities of the Holocaust took place. Poland's foreign ministry has claimed that this event was overall a great celebration of Poles, differing in their views, but united around the common values of freedom and loyalty to an independent homeland. Rather than excusing this racism and hatred, Poland has chosen to justify these actions, showing just how ingrained these ideas can be when not questioned. Poland is not alone in this, however, as proven by our president's failure to denounce white supremacy earlier this year in Charlottesville. Racism, nationalism, and anti-Semitism are not things that have disappeared at any point throughout our history, but have manifested themselves in different locations and in different ways. That is why it is so imperative that we discuss these topics here today. I'd like to introduce my friend, Dylan Sachs.
Hello, I'm Dylan. I'm a sophomore at Ovieda High School, and I'm on the board for the school's JSU. So, prior to August 11th and 12th, 2017, Charlottesville, Virginia was best known for the University of Virginia and as the home of Thomas Jefferson. But things changed that weekend. The infamous rally in Charlottesville, Virginia began as an attempt to remove a statue commemorating the famous Confederate general, Robert E. Lee. Many citizens in the area felt the statue was offensive and represented the oppression that African Americans experienced prior to and during the Civil War. Protesters of the statue were quickly met with white nationalists and neo-Nazis counter-protesting the occasion. This alt-right gathering, which resulted in 1 death and 19 injuries, exposed the extreme feelings of anti-Semitism and racism that are still prevalent in America today. About 2 months later, protests occurred at the University of Florida as outraged individuals spoke out against guest speaker Richard Spencer. Spencer was hoping to speak at the university about his white nationalist ideas and was met with opposition from students and others who numbered about 2,500. More than 500 law enforcement officers were deployed for the event. The controversy of the event prompted the governor to declare a state of emergency. The protest resulted in 5 people with minor injuries and 2 arrests. And this happened about 200 miles from where we sit today. These incidents are not isolated. Regrettably, the news is full of stories relating acts of anti-Semitism. In the immortal words of Elie Wiesel, "Never again" has symbolized the hope expressed by people that the Holocaust would not repeat itself. Yet, instances of anti-Semitism have indeed been experienced since the Holocaust, most recently in Charlottesville, Virginia, and the University of Florida, within a few months of each other. It is our collective responsibility to ensure that anti-Semitism is exposed in presentations like this and repudiated by not only Jews, but also by Americans who believe in the rights of individuals to practice their religion in a safe environment. That is what the Constitution stands for. I have hope that never again will be a reality in my lifetime. I would now like to welcome Aviv Kutner.
are removed from us. They're in Gainesville or in Virginia or even in Poland. We believe that these things do not affect us because we cannot see them. They're far away, but many times they're not so removed. My mother worked across from the Jewish Community Center in Maitland for many years. From where she worked, she could very easily see the JCC and the area surrounding it. Something that stuck in my mind was her calling me one day and telling me about how the JCC had received a bomb threat that morning and how all the kids who went to that school there had to be evacuated. She told me about the dozens of lines of children waiting outside from her window as police searched the JCC, a place that so much of the community is connected to. The Orlando JCC and around 80 other JCCs across North America have had the same experience multiple times just this year. We have to remember that anti-Semitism isn't far away from us. It's not just in Poland or in Virginia or even in Gainesville, but rather much closer to home. And with that, I'd like to introduce Seth and Sami.
Okay, so I am I am a senior here at Ovieda High School, and through the years I've been blind to things that never really specifically affected me. After developing close relationships with people who are Jewish, it's opened my eyes to challenges that some face that we rarely hear about as a society. After knowing some remarkable people for some time, they've shown me the traditions of Judaism by having me over for Rosh Hashanah, Passover, and even took me to Yom Kippur services. I'm not Jewish, if you can't already tell, but I'm still accepted not only in the JSU, but as a board member. What I have to say is very important, because hatred like the example seen here at Ovieda High School simply cannot be tolerated. Threats are made towards people I truly care about, and I witness their fear. This hate hit deep, and seeing how this impacted them made me angry. But when has anger ever changed the world? Change can only be made through love and togetherness. Drawing swastikas on anything, yelling anti-Semitic slurs, threatening Jewish kids, all these demonstrations have happened right here on this campus. This truly helped me understand that just because an issue doesn't directly impact you, that doesn't mean it shouldn't affect you. This is a problem our society seems to struggle with a lot lately. The events of anti-Semitism in this school have been very taxing and cause students to be scared to speak out about their religion or about anything. Hate is such an isolating force, but we shouldn't be scared to be ourselves. Only the light of love can drive out the darkness of hate. Thank you. And now, Rayna Rose Exelbierd, the representative from StandWithUs, an IDF soldier, as she shares her story.
Before I speak, can everyone do me a favor and just put up a B-side? This is like so beautiful that I want to make sure that I remember this picture forever.
What you might not be able to tell is that I'm a third-generation Holocaust survivor. Can anyone raise their hand if this is going to be your first time tonight hearing from a survivor? Wow. So you're in for a really special treat tonight because Genia and Gerald are not only incredible people, but they're especially special to me. Now I'm sure you're wondering, who is watching this program. Why was she yelling at everybody when they were walking in? So, I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. I don't know where my accent is. If you find it, I'll take it back. But growing up in Memphis, Tennessee, I was really involved as a teenager. I was in student government, I played sports, and as I mentioned, growing up in Memphis, there's a really, really famous civil rights leader who was assassinated in Memphis. Can anybody tell me who that was? Martin Luther King. You guys are so smart. So I want to ask you a very, very important question. You see, my grandparents, they were really lucky. They didn't go to a concentration camp, but they were on the run. Back then, there was no Siri, help me find NATO troops. For years, my grandparents were on the run, trading services like tutoring and sewing, and trusting strangers to hide them in their house. And after the war, I'm really proud to share that my grandfather ran a displacement persons camp. Now, for those of you who don't know, when the war ended, the Jews didn't just leave Europe. They were put in these camps called displacement persons camps, so that until they found a new home to go to, this is where they lived. And in my grandfather's displacement persons camp, people learned a skill, so that when you went to America, or when you went to whatever country it was, you were a carpenter, or you were a seamstress. And you're never going to believe where my grandfather ran the camp. In Nuremberg. Has anybody ever heard of the Nuremberg laws? So my next question, the Nuremberg laws are what inspired the Nazis, sort of their ideology of how they were going to murder people. Now, I told you I was from Memphis, so I want to ask you, how do you think my grandparents felt when they moved to Memphis, Tennessee and saw segregation? What was one of the first things that happened in World War II? Jews had to put on stars. So you could see why it felt very natural for the Jewish people and my grandparents and those other survivors to get involved with the civil rights movement. A lot of people don't know this, but the Jewish community was marching alongside the black community. Not just in the South, but in Washington, D.C. Who here has heard of the Civil Rights Act? Now, I want you to keep your hand raised if you knew that that act was signed in a Jewish building. Every single person sitting in this room has a story, and your family has a story. And it is your duty to learn your neighbor's story, so that if they ever face any injustice, you will be there. You will not be a bystander, you will be an upstander. This is 2017. When you see hatred, it may not be anti-Semitism, it might be you see somebody in the hallway that dropped their stuff. You need to help them pick it up. You need to. When I was your age, I thought I was going to be a rapper. Here I am on the mic. No, but really, that's why my Instagram is Dr. Dreidel, because I was convinced. My poor friends, y'all. So, when I graduated high school, all of my friends were going to college, and I wanted to do something different. So I decided that I was going to go to Israel for a year. And the first 3 months, I volunteered in the Israeli army. It was amazing. The next 3 months, I lived in Jerusalem. Who here has heard of Jerusalem? All right. So Israel might be a Jewish country, but Jerusalem is holy to Muslims, Christians, and Jews. It's not about her story or his story. If you ever get the chance to go to Jerusalem, you'll see It's all our story, people. And when I was living in Israel, in Jerusalem, I was volunteering at an archaeological dig site. Fortunately, Israel's really old, so I found some good stuff. The next 3 months, I was coaching Jewish and Arab children in soccer outside of Tel Aviv, discovering house and electronic music, and meeting best friends that I still have to this day at some of the most incredible parties. And I had the best year of my life. And then I moved to Florida, FAU. Okay? Florida's pretty awesome too. And when I got to college at FAU in Boca, I had an incredible experience. I studied international business. I got involved with student government. I joined a sorority. I got involved with the Jewish club as well. But if y'all can believe this, when I got to college, I was bullied by Jewish students and non-Jewish students for having volunteered in the Israeli army and for loving Israel so much. My picture was posted all over social media with really nasty things written about me. These bullies were allowed to bring a person to my school who said the Holocaust never happened. How do you think I felt, a granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, to know that my university paid for the program? How would you feel if you came home Friday night and on your dorm was an eviction notice? And it was through overcoming those challenges that I realized, you know what? I really got to get educated so that I can teach people about what's going on over there. And it was through overcoming those challenges that I realized I don't just love Israel, but I love teaching people about Israel. And the reason I tell you this story is because sometimes in life, it is your biggest challenges that will inspire your biggest blessings. Sometimes you want to say, why? Why me? But I'm going to challenge you today to say, why not me? I would not be here today with all 600 people had that experience not happened. And it's the same thing for the student who I'm about to introduce, who I love, and I don't have any younger siblings, but I look at Sami as a little sister, and I see so much of myself in her that I can't believe that she's only a junior. Sophomore. Excuse me. Only a sophomore, because if she was a junior, she'd already be my intern. So, the point that I want to close on is sometimes in life, it's not the circumstances, it's not what happens that defines you, it's how you respond that defines you. Last time I was here, she checked me in at my hotel. So, the point that I want to make, again, in life, your biggest challenges are what inspire your biggest blessings and your biggest opportunities. Don't be afraid to be the first one. If somebody tells you no, you know what? That spells on also. And just remember that in life, sometimes you don't have to be liked to be respected, and you should always do the right thing and treat other people how you want to be treated. If we don't raise each other up, if we don't learn each other's story, then no one is going to be there to help you tell that story. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to present to you, to introduce to you, can I get a drum roll please? Only 16 years old, a sophomore at Ovieda High School. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Sami Kuperberg!
I'm actually 15, but I love you.
name is Sami Kuperberg, and I am the president of the Jewish Student Union here at Ovieda High School. I would like to thank all of you for coming out tonight. This event has been my dream for over a year, and seeing all of you out here to show that hate will not win is a dream come true. At the beginning of my freshman year, a student in one of my classes started making Holocaust jokes and Jewish jokes. After a while, it escalated to the point where I could not raise my hands in class because I would be told to put your hand down, Jew. This student in class grabbed my arm, pinned it down, and drew swastikas on me on multiple occasions. This wasn't just one ignorant student in one class. It was almost all of my classes with many students and even sometimes teachers. One day, a student threw a water bottle at my head and told me to pick it up, Jew. After I refused, he began to punch and kick my back and arms. That night, I decided something needed to change. I was sick of waking up each morning, terrified to go to school, to the things that were awaiting me. My journey to bring this presentation to Oviedo began. What followed was months of planning with the help of many people, some of whom I now call friends. Initially, there was resistance on the part of the administration, and with some help from Seminole County School Board and Seminole County Administration, permission was granted and a date was set. As many of you know, Hurricane Irma had other plans. These schools were closed the week that we had scheduled, but our fire was not put out. When school resumed, we immediately began the search for an alternative date. Coordinating the many sponsors and of course our 2 survivors was no easy task. I would like to thank all of the organizations who helped sponsor tonight, all of my family and friends for supporting me throughout the process, all of you for coming tonight, and most importantly, our 2 survivors, Genia and Gerald, for traveling here and sharing your stories with us. So without further ado, I have 2 presents. First, a flower, because flowers bloom where there is hope. Second one's coming. And second, a small token of our appreciation for you just coming here and sharing your stories, so inspiring and motivating us to stand up. So without further ado, I present Genia, Kutner, and Gerald Biegel.
I'm Gerald Biegel. I was born in Berlin, in Germany, 1928. And I lived in a normally neighborhood, mixed neighborhood, but mostly non-Jews. When I was growing up, in the beginning, everything was normal. And then Hitler started, nobody talked about it, with mentally children. Whoever had a mentally case, he didn't want to have any mentally people living in Germany. He had them all killed. Nobody talked much about them. Then they went after the Jews. So when I was 13, when I went to the school, I went to the regular school. They didn't want me. I was sitting in the back, and I was 6 years old, and nobody talked to me. After that, my mother got me in a regular school, Jewish school. So I was about 3 miles away, so I went every day. When I was 7, 8 years old, by 9 years old, I went by bicycle. And it was pretty normal. And then it started with Hitler. So he started first with, if you ever remember, 1938, they had a crystal night. I don't know if everybody remember that. They allowed everybody to break in every store, Jewish store, and break the windows and take whatever they want. They went to the Jewish synagogue and they burned every synagogue. And they did in private homes where they had a lot of Jewish steeple, a little synagogue, where the very Orthodox one, and took the Torahs out and put them on the street and burned them. And when the rabbis want to pick them up, they took them and cut off their beard, and it was a mess. I was 10 years old and I remember it like today. After that, we started to send a lot of people to the camps. But none of the camps actually was made in Germany. Most of the murder camps where they gassed the people and shot the people was made in Poland. I don't know why, but they didn't want the German to see it. So then when I was about 12, 13 years old, I went to 3 schools in between. Every time they closed one school, they needed the property, and I went to another one. And when I was 13 years old, there was no more school for Jews. So I had to go to work in a cemetery and cut up the metal that was for big fancy graves. There were plenty medals, and I had a torch, and I cut them up. I came home one day, and a neighbor was standing outside and said, "Don't go home, the Gestapo's waiting for us, for you." On every corner, one of the non-Jews, friends of my parents or our neighbors, standing there and said, "Don't go home," and sent us to somebody to hide. And it shows you, Germany had a lot of people. There was not Jewish haters. They just had no choice. So I lived underground for 1 year by 20 different people, because you couldn't live long underground by anybody, because you have to, the police know whoever moved in one apartment to the next door, they had to go to the police and write down how many people lived there. So it was not easy. But I got my mother, my sister, and my father. There was in a separate hiding place. And I and my brother, we went to different hiding places. So, but a lot of Jews kept on going. But I got caught on the black market. They didn't know I was Jewish. They know there was a few people there who went on the black market to buy food. So I got arrested, and I was in jail for a few months until they found out that I was a Jew with a fingerprint. Germany was exact. The police, they know everybody who lived wherever they are. They were very correct. So I went to first the Gestapo. They want to know. They know my parents were still outside. And I told them I don't know. I lived on the street, and I lived in basements, and that's what I on my story. And a day before my 15th birthday, I got caught. So after a few months in jail, I went to Auschwitz. I met my brother. I met my brother in a collection section. And I went together with my brother to Auschwitz. And in one wagon, there was all the one who was in hiding. So there were all mostly young people. We were about 50 in the one wagon to Auschwitz, and they cut out a hole. Somebody had a saw, and they cut a hole in the wagon so we can jump out. But we got caught, and they put another board there, and they put an SS-man sitting there on the outside until we came to Auschwitz. When we came to Auschwitz, they wanted to shoot all of us, so two guys said they did it, and they took them away to the gas chamber. So when they picked me, when they picked my brother to the right, or me to the left means gas. So I went automatically to after my brother when I got into Auschwitz, otherwise I wouldn't be here. He was 2 years older than I am. And then we came to Auschwitz, first they gave us a number and an arm, we had to undress, and we got the uniform, and we got, they sent my brother to a different camp, to Buna. It was an outside camp from Auschwitz. And me, they sent to a place to learn how to bricklaying. But after a few months of learning, they then put on some bricklaying. We had to carry the bricks up the ladder, and the cement up the ladder, and people worried about drinking water. The water we drank was when the cement settled down and there was water on top. That's what I drank, to have water. And we, in Auschwitz, the first day when we were in Auschwitz, we got a piece of bread. So I took half of the bread and put it in my pocket for the morning. But in the morning, I had a big hole in my pocket. I can't eat it all up. So I learned the lesson not to leave anything from one day to the next. So I was in Auschwitz for almost 2 years. All my friends I met in Auschwitz, they came a year earlier, and none of them made it. Because I was lucky, I lived underground in hiding for 1 year. I made it, first of all, I got older, otherwise I wouldn't be here. So, even my teachers I met in Auschwitz, none of them made it. So, after we were in Auschwitz quite a while, I had a toothache. I just want to tell you a little thing. I had a toothache, so I went to we had a sick bay. Yeah, one of the guys holds me on his stone, the other one, my hands in the back, and another one takes a plier and pulled out the teeth. And he took out the wrong one, so he took another one. I was bleeding for 3 days. That's Auschwitz. In Auschwitz, you got a little water with leaves in the morning. For lunch, you had just water, soup. And if you're lucky, you found something in there, some leaves or something. At night, you got a slice of bread. And sometimes a slice, very small slice of salami, whatever it was. So after you're in Auschwitz, every morning you stay an appel and be counted before you move out. And when you come back, you stay there sometimes for hours. And the people drop dead there because they have to wait until everybody's there. If somebody was missing, or if somebody was hiding in a bank, or somebody tried to run away, we had to stay there until they found them. There was no other way. So a lot of people just dropped dead while they were standing there. Then, if you had too many people in Auschwitz, Mengele, who was the doctor who is in charge of who's going to live and who's going to die, he's the one who points the finger wherever you go. So every once in a while, you had to go naked into the bathroom, and even in the winter time, you had to go freezing to go in the bathroom. Everybody who is skinny a little bit, doesn't look big, the truck outside takes you right to the gas chamber. So that's how they clean out the camp, and they have too many. So that's what they had to do every a few times a year. Then, at the end, Auschwitz, we went on a dead march. In a dead march, the whole camp, not only Auschwitz, every camp around there had to go to the dead march because the Russian came. So they didn't want they want to empty the camp and put them closer to inside Germany. So we came, there was thousands and thousands of people, and whoever on the snow was, it was in January 20-something, 15. And the snow was so high, and people couldn't walk. So they dropped dead, or a big truck was in the back who picked up the dead people. They didn't want to leave them laying there, because it was awful. So we came into another camp, Groß-Rosen. And in Groß-Rosen, they were overloaded with people, not only Jews, Russian, every country. They had from every country people who worked in Germany, in Europe, and who did something, they were in camp too. So they all went there. So it was a really mess. And all of them, they got pushed when they picked up food from the kitchen, they got pushed against the electric wires and they burned. So people didn't want to go to pick up food. It was thanks God, it was a short time. After this, he went to Buchenwald. He came to Buchenwald, an open train, like the coal train. They have the coal train that is open. That's where we were. We was covered with snow, and the SS was on top, and they shoot when you look out. So there had to be law, and the America came, the planes, and there was a big station. And they bombed the whole station. A lot of Jews and a lot of German of the Nazis got killed. And whoever was left, we went to Buchenwald. In Buchenwald, I found my father. And when he came from a different camp, he didn't know, he got caught. He was in the last train to Auschwitz. In Berlin. Then he was pointed out that he was a Jew, and my mother and my sister got killed. My mother was 39, my sister was 13, after they lived in hiding for 2.5 years. And anyway, I found my father, so I went together with them in Buchenwald, and one day they said, sorry, you can't stay here. No, anybody wants extra food, so I said, you stay here, I go outside and see if they have extra food, because we didn't have much to eat altogether. So they didn't put me no food, they sent me to transport to Berger. And Berger was a camp who was, they got, every time 100 people died, they got 100 new ones. Because they made a hole in the mountains for a factory. And next to us was a camp for POWs. Jews POWs. People didn't talk about it for many years, but it was a POW for the Jewish prisoners. And they had the prisoners, they had the same work like we, but not only Jews. There was a lot of non-Jews who was desirable. The one who tried to run away, the one who made the problems, they sent him too. So there was a lot of non-Jews. And over there we worked for, I made it short all the day. And over there we worked make a hole in the mountains anyway. And I got hurt on my foot. And I had high temperature, and I couldn't walk, and I couldn't stand up. My foot was double the size. I had foot poisoning. So then a couple of my friends from Auschwitz told me, we're going to go out on another death march. We have to empty the camp. I said, I can't even stand up. I was in the sick bay with about 15 more other people. So they left us, and about 10 hours later, they took me on a train to Dachau. In Dachau, I was half dead. They put me in one of the cabins, and I was laying between two dead people for 3 days. And after 3 days, they took us out, put us on a wagon to be burned. So on the way there, somebody saw me moving, and they took me off the wagon. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And then I was in Dachau, and from Dachau, they put us on the train to Innsbruck, because the Americans came too close to Austria. But before we got there, and from the train, they stopped us in Seefeld. I don't know if people know, it's in the mountains of Germany, on Austria border. Over there were the SS on the way, and we were a couple of thousand people. It was a very big station, open. So the Austria police came, said you cannot come to Austria, you have to go back to Germany. So on the way walking, there was only one road to walk, and one side is water, but runs down from the mountains, and the other one is a railroad, and then the big mountains. So we had to walk on the highway, and a whole group of SS came. So they put us on a stone where the water runs down, and said, you have to stay there. So they waited until everybody came on the whole trip, and I had two friends there with me. They took me on the arm and said, let's run. So we ran up the mountains. We ran over the railroad and up the mountain. They started to shoot after us, but they didn't hit us. But they started to shoot. About a lot of them ran away, and about 700 people got killed that night. They killed shooting. And Hitler was dead already. It was April 29, and they were still shooting. So when I went up the mountains, there was cabins. They were full with German soldiers. They let us come in, they gave us some food, they was hiding for the SS. Then, after a few days, the American came. So the American saw my foot, they took me to the sick bay and said, sorry, they have to cut my foot. I told them I don't want to live without the foot. I had high fall on the 3 times the size of a foot. Said, I'm falling, they cleaned me out and I got my foot. After this, I went to TP camp. But in between, in Auschwitz, I met a guy from Berlin. He was a Georgia soldier, yeah. And he was on follow. He came home to his family, not a Jew. He came home to his family, and he mentioned that they told us not to put people in prison, just kill them. And they were on the Russian front. So he told it to his mother, wife, and the kids while they were home when he was on follow. And the one son told it in the Hitler Jugend to the captain, and they sent him to Auschwitz because he said something like this. So there was a German, not a Jew. There were plenty Germans in Auschwitz. Whoever didn't, who were not Jews, they also died like we did because they didn't belong to his party. So if they said anything against Hitler, they all went to the camp too, not only Jews. So people don't think there were 6 million people, Jews was killed, but I think 8 or 10 million people got killed altogether besides in the war. So it was a really bad mess. Any question? Thank you.
So you heard a very sad story, a very true story, and a story that is unimaginable that people should hate each other to an extent of causing so much aggravation and intolerance and grievance to another person. So it happens that Jerry Biegel is my dear friend and my partner. We are already together. So he went through his story, and I have a little different story. So now I'm telling you my story. Well, number one, I want to tell you shalom. I want to hear everybody say shalom. 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 Shalom means in Hebrew, good morning, good evening, and peace. The word peace in Hebrew is said shalom. We all want to have peace. It's very important for all of us to live in peace, be in peace, and tolerate each other. So I am a survivor, as you know. I was 11 years old when World War II started in 1939. Most of you were not born yet. Yes, until the war was until 1945. Years of suffering, you heard, is not only 1,000, millions of people, of starving, freezing, and running for their life. It all started a dictator named Adolf Hitler. How many of you heard about him? Oh, quite a few, not too many. He decided that his country, Germany, would rule over the entire world. He started with the young students, young people like you, your age, and even younger, teaching them to hate everybody who is not German, and especially the Jews, for no reason at all. Especially the Jews. They call themselves the Nazis. Who has heard about the Nazis? I'm sure you heard a lot now, right? Their symbol was a swastika. So they brought tragedy in almost all of the European countries. The Nazis bearing the swastika began to kill, to gas people, like Jerry told you right now. It's all true stories, especially built ovens. Can you imagine? People should build ovens to burn other people. Why? For what? And again, especially force the Jewish people to ghettos, to concentration camp. This is what genocide really is. 6 million people, 14 million innocent people, Jews and non-Jews, all those that were against Germany, against the Nazis. The biggest catastrophe in world history, and all of them were killed. When the Nazis came to our city, I come from Poland, we had no choice but to run for our lives. You see, I was luckier than Jerry. We decided, I was 11 years old. My father decided to run. He took this family, me, my brother, and a little brother who didn't make it, I wrote it here. And we were running. Thousands of us left our homes, our schools, and our lives behind us. We ran towards Russia, because the town where I was born was not far from Russia. It was 90 kilometers. It took us 3 days by foot to get to Russia. Imagine little children, my brother was 3 years old, I was 11 and 13, to run for 3 days by foot. No home, no food, no run, just running and having behind the Germans wanted to kill us. I was lucky to survive with my parents and brother, a 3-year-old who did not make it. My brave father managed to elude the Nazis. As soon as we heard the Nazis were in the next town, we ran. Years of starving, watching others die, being helpless against tyranny. When the war was finally ended in 1945, we returned to Poland to find a vast graveyard, killed almost all the Jewish people and many non-Jewish people that were against the Nazis. They did not agree with the Nazis' politics. Entire families missing, everybody dead. Our home was taken by strangers. And when we came to our home, and we wanted to, and we said, this is our home, and they said to us, this is not your home anymore, out of here. And they were ready even to kill us. This was not already the Nazis, I don't remember saying. What do we do now? So my parents decided to go to our homeland, to Palestine, called in those days, and now Israel. Israel is our home, and that's where the Jewish people were going. Most of the people left Europe because we felt there's no place for us. We need our own country. Our goal here today, mine and Jerry's, to educate you, the young people, about the terrible consequences of bigotry, racism, and anti-Semitism. Stand up, like Sami, stand up. Stand up against it. What difference does it make what religion or color or race another person is? We have to stop to gossip, to bully each other, make up stories, and making fun of each other who we think are different from us. We have to respect, tolerate each other. And as my daughter told me to tell you that even to be kind to the animals, because she is very much involved with the animals. Please don't let anybody influence you with hatred that brings tragedy, disaster, and killing. Or let us live in tolerance, respect each other, and have peace. We, the Holocaust survivors, know well the costs of hatred. We bear its marks on our body and in our soul up to date. Up to date, at night, we dream about the dogs that are chasing us when we came, and the dogs that chased the Jewish people when they came to Auschwitz. I'm sure you went maybe to the movies to see Schindler's List or whatever. Now you have a choice. You have a choice, like Rayna said, to be bystanders or to be upstanders, like Sami. Don't allow ugly appeals to hate to undermine America's society, because America has been fighting against this form of evil throughout our history. We must work together as one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Add something. If not for the German non-Jews who hided us for over a year, I wouldn't be here. Not only that, all my friends, all my family got killed. On 36 of my close family, parents, grandparents, cousins, uncles, only on 36, only 3 of us came out alive, because the older the year before, I got in, because we were hiding by non-Jews who was giving their life to save us.
Well, I was to say, after the war, we did not go out on a rampage of, how do you say it in English, on a rampage of, no? Didn't go out on a rampage of what? Revenge. I have 5 languages in my a big mishmash. So, revenge. We all build up our homes. We have families, we have children, we raised them, and we told them to love each other and to be with each other. We married, we went and found jobs. I came to America Sunday. Monday I applied for a job. We never went for welfare for survivors. Tuesday I went to work, and I started to work. And thank God, America is a country of opportunity. If you are working and not blaming, just look at the be optimistic in your life, see everything in a good light, and build up a life for yourself like we build up a life for ourselves. We don't forget what we went through, but we have forgiven. We have forgiven the Germans, but we don't forget it, what they had done.
So before we go into questions, there's something that I really want to share with everyone. And I don't know if you can see from where you're sitting, but on Jerry's arm, he has a number. Can you show them your?
Only Auschwitz get number tattooed on my arm. It was the name. If he didn't have a name in Auschwitz, he only had a number. He was called by the number, and that's it. And the funny part is, one number is 127,000. That means that the people came in later on, went up to 200,000, and a BA number, it went up and up. But the number I have is 12/7, December 7. I got 2 children, born on this day, 5 years apart.
So no pressure, but we're going to take some questions for the survivors before we close out. I'm just going to repeat the questions so that way everybody can hear. But does anyone have any questions for Genia and Jerry? So the question was, would Genia and Jerry go back and visit a concentration camp?
It happens, we have an organization called the March of the Living, and I said to myself, I have very bad memories from Poland. It happens that Poland, today it's better in Poland, but Poland was an anti-Semitic country, and I was a little girl, and I had bad memories, and I said, no, I'm not going. Happens 2 years ago, somehow I decided at my high age, you can imagine that I'm not a youngster anymore, at my high age, I decided to go to Poland. And I think I was crying, very crying when I was in Poland. It's a week to be in Poland and 1 week to Israel. So when I was a week in Poland, we went to all the cemeteries, but it's important to remember, not to forget. And I would suggest whoever is able and wants to go on the March of the Living.
People don't realize that the Jews had a life before World War II. They were very much part of the society. What is their story?
So the question was, before the war, the Jewish people were very much a part of the society. Doctors, actresses, musicians. So the question is, what was your story before the war?
I was a little girl.
What was your parents' story before the war? What were your parents doing?
Okay, everybody was very well in Germany. There were no problem whatsoever until Hitler came.
Until one dictator came and changed the door. It was a life like now, you know, a real life, you know. They were working and I went to school and we were a very happy family in people and a little anti-Semitism, but we still, yeah.
Actually, in Germany before the war, World War I, every Jew had to go to the army, just like here. I mean, there was nothing different in Germany before Hitler. And Hitler changed the whole world. So he wanted to take over the whole world, not only the Jews. He wanted to have America too and the rest. If he would have the atomic bomb, none of us would be here.
No pressure, but are there any more questions? Oh. So the question is, after everything that you've gone through and everything that you've experienced, and you're building a family and a life, looking back at your history, would you change it?
I would change to love each other. It should never, never happen again, something what we went through. So only by having respect for each other, tolerate no matter who we are, white, black, just we should live in peace and in harmony and help each other and do for each other and love each other. Most important, what we need today is love and peace.
We're talking from the Jewish perspective, but there's a lot of parallels that we can take from Genia and Jerry's story and current events. During World War II, there were boats of Jews who left Europe trying to come into America, and those boats were turned away. Do you know what happened to those Jews? They were murdered. So some people believe that Israel was created because of the Holocaust, but make no mistake, had Israel been formally established earlier on, think of how many Jews could have been saved. During World War II, the British were managing where Israel is today, almost like a colony. And if you can believe this, during World War II, they issued something called the White Papers. And the White Papers prevented Jews from leaving Europe for safety in Israel. We had a question here.
So we appreciate hearing the story. Is it documented elsewhere?
We really appreciate hearing your story. Has your story been documented anywhere else?
Spielberg documented tens of thousands of stories like ours. And I appreciate your coming. Thank you so much for coming and hearing to us. And I hope you will teach your children and your grandchildren that what happens when you hate. There's no place for hate. We have to love each other.
So I'm going to close it out before I pass the mic over to Sami. And I mentioned I work for an organization. Called StandWithUs. And when I first started 3 years ago, I was working with a student who experienced similar challenges to Sami. And when the administration refused to do anything, with the help of our legal department, we filed against the school for negligence, and the administration came back and they called my student a liar. So we don't back down at StandWithUs, especially not me because I'm from Memphis. We took it to the next level. to the superintendent, and when the superintendent met my student and heard everything that he went through, because of Eliab, the entire school district of Houston now has an initiative that if any student feels that they're facing racism, bullying, or intolerance, they can file a complaint, and a group of administrators will look into the complaint. Now, why is it important that a group looks into the complaint? Right, so that it's not biased and you have a diversity of opinion. So not only was that initiative instituted, but the entire student handbook was rewritten that it is your right as a student to feel that your rights are being upheld. That was 3 years ago. This past year at the University of Texas, my student's classmate came back to the dorm crying because his calculus teacher made a comment about what brilliant engineering the Jews had that they were able to murder so many Jews. A calculus teacher. And because of Eliab's experiences, he knew how to help his friend, and we're now dealing with that situation. We can't be everywhere in the world. You are all our eyes and our ears if you hear any hatred or misinformation when it comes to our community. And we truly, truly thank you from the bottom of our hearts. My grandparents passed away a long time ago, but I don't think it's any coincidence that this is the work that I'm doing. And I wasn't a straight A student. I wasn't the most well-behaved. In fact, I actually got in a lot of trouble for talking in class, and now I talk for a living. So your gifts, they might come in mysterious ways. But don't be afraid to speak up, because one day starts today. Thank you.
That is a huge accomplishment for us. So if you felt inspired by tonight hearing these stories and you want to make a further change in Oviedo, on Friday in Ms. Haran's room, you'll see posters up this week. We are going to have our next Jewish Student Union meeting. It is open to everybody. So come, it's going to be a Hanukkah party, wear your ugliest Christmas or Hanukkah sweater. We're just going to eat latkes and hang out. So please just come and show your support. Thank you again. They will be outside, and have a good night.